She was just a 15-year-old girl sitting quietly in her first-class seat with a valid ticket in hand, until a flight attendant told her she didn't belong and ordered her to the back of the plane. No one defended her. But when she pulled out her phone and sent one message to her aunt, the FAA grounded the entire flight within minutes. She sat still in seat 2A, her hands folded neatly in her lap over a sleek blue travel bag. Her name was Amira Wells, a 15-year-old girl with soft curls tucked beneath a gray hoodie and eyes that carried the quiet glow of someone who had earned their moment. She wasn't talking, wasn't drawing attention. She just stared out the oval window as sunlight skimmed the edge of the terminal. The plane hummed with the soft shuffles of boarding passengers and the hushed voices of attendants directing traffic. It was Amira's first time flying alone. A gift, her aunt called it. A reward for winning first place in a national youth science competition. The ticket had arrived in the mail folded inside a handwritten note from her aunt, Dr. Regina Harper, first class, of course. You earned it. Love, Aunt R. Amira had clutched that ticket all the way through security, past the gate, and down the jet bridge. She had taken her seat early, headphones resting around her neck, her book unopened, her breath steady. She felt proud. Nervous, yes, but proud. She had done everything right. Checked in politely. Stored her bag beneath the seat. Didn't speak to anyone. She was just a kid on her way home, quietly waiting for the sky. The first-class cabin was calm, hushed with the scent of new leather and lemon-scented wipes. Across the aisle, a woman with pearl earrings scrolled through emails. A man in a tailored navy suit grumbled into a phone. The flight attendants moved with quiet efficiency. One helped a couple with overhead bags. Another adjusted the coffee cart. Then came the sound. The unmistakable click of heels on cabin carpet. Sharp. Purposeful. Measured. Amira didn't turn her head, but she felt it the moment energy shifted. A tall woman approached with squared shoulders and a neatly pinned bun. Her name tag read D. Langley. She stopped next to Amira's seat, smiled stiffly, and gave the kind of look that didn't quite reach the eyes. Miss, she said, her voice firm, I believe you're in the wrong seat. Amira blinked and turned her head. No, ma'am. This is 2A. It's on my ticket. Her voice was gentle, steady. Ms. Langley's smile dropped. This is the first-class cabin, she clarified, louder this time. Are you sure you're not supposed to be further back? Amira reached into her hoodie and pulled out her boarding pass, slightly crumpled but clearly marked. Seat 2A. First class. The woman took it, scanned it quickly, then looked at Amira again as if seeing something that didn't fit. Her eyes narrowed. Where are your parents? She asked. The question stung. Not just the words, but the tone. The assumption. Amira sat up a little straighter. I'm traveling alone, she said quietly. My aunt booked the ticket. Ms. Langley's lips tightened. I'm going to need you to gather your things, she said. We need to keep the boarding process moving, and you can't stay here. For a second, Amira thought she had misheard. She glanced down at the pass still in the woman's hand. But this is my seat, she said again. Firmer this time. It's printed right there. Ms. Langley didn't flinch. I don't know how you got it, but this isn't your section. I need you to move to the back. Now. The cabin had gone quiet. People weren't watching directly, but they were listening. Amira could feel their ears turned toward her, the weight of judgment slipping in like cold air through a cracked door. She stood slowly. Didn't argue. Didn't cry. Just picked up her bag, eyes burning but dry. She walked past rows of polished seats, past businessmen and silent bystanders, past people who had decided she didn't belong, not because of what they saw on her ticket, but because of what they saw on her skin. She found a seat near the rear of the aircraft, by the window, near the engine hum and the coffee-scented curtain. Her heart was pounding. Her face flushed. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down her bag. She stared out the small oval window again. The tarmac looked different now. Colder. She pulled out her phone and opened a text thread labeled Antar. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Then she typed, "She said I didn't belong. Made me move to the back. Didn't even check." She hit send. 1 minute passed. Then another. Then a reply. Just 2 words, "What happened?" Amira exhaled. For the first time since she boarded, she allowed herself to feel something, relief. She typed back slowly, carefully, "Flight attendant told me I had the wrong seat. I showed her my ticket. She didn't believe me. Said I had to move. I'm in the back now." The message lingered on the screen for a second before she hit send again. Her fingers shook. Not from fear, but from the sting of being silenced. Seconds later, her phone buzzed again. "Stay where you are. Do not speak to anyone else. I'll handle it." Amira stared at the message. Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't know what her aunt could do. She was on a plane. In the airfield. The doors were sealed. But she remembered something her aunt once told her while fixing Amira's science fair display the night before nationals: never confuse quiet with powerless. Up front, the captain's phone lit up. "Ground control line. Urgent priority." He answered. The voice on the other end was calm, but direct. "Captain Reyes," the voice said, "this is FAA Ops. You're being ordered to hold position. Do not proceed to runway. Director Regina Harper has filed an immediate compliance concern regarding a passenger on board." The captain's eyes narrowed. He had flown senators, governors, once even a presidential candidate. But he had never received a direct halt order from the FAA for a child. He tapped his co-pilot on the arm. "We're holding," he said. Something just changed. In the galley, Ms. Langley sipped from a paper cup. She looked relaxed. Smug, even. A younger attendant leaned toward her. "About the girl earlier," he said. "I saw her ticket. It looked valid." Ms. Langley shrugged. "You can print anything these days. I've been doing this for over 10 years. I know when something feels off." The young attendant didn't reply. He just looked away. Quiet. Unsettled. In seat 28F, Amira stared at the seatbelt sign above her. Still glowing. Still grounded. Her phone buzzed again. "Flight grounded. Captain has been notified. More to come. Stay calm." She blinked. Something was happening. She didn't understand it yet. But she knew her aunt didn't bluff. From the aisle ahead, a passenger pressed the call button. Another peered out the window. The plane hadn't moved. No announcements. No pushback. Just stillness. Ms. Langley straightened a stack of napkins like nothing was wrong. But something had shifted. And Amira could feel it. In her chest. In the air. In the silence that wasn't just silence anymore. It was waiting. Waiting for a voice louder than the lie that sent her walking down that aisle. Waiting for a truth no one on board could ignore. And at the center of it all sat a teenage girl in a hoodie, quiet as ever, but no longer unseen. The cabin was still. Suspiciously still. The usual clinking of glasses, the quiet shuffle of bags overhead, even the light murmur of attendants confirming final counts, all of it had vanished. Amira Wells remained in her seat near the back of the plane, her fingers resting over her phone, the last message from her aunt glowing on the screen: "Stay where you are. I'll handle it." That should have made her feel safe. It did, in part. But it also made the air heavier. Tighter. Around her, passengers shifted restlessly, eyeing the overhead bins or glancing toward the front where nothing seemed to be moving. No one had announced a delay. No one had said a word. And still, the plane hadn't budged. In the cockpit, Captain Reyes stared down at the command panel, the flight schedule blinking in defiance. The call he had just taken wasn't routine. It hadn't come from operations or dispatch. It had come straight from the FAA's Office of Compliance, referencing a direct report filed by none other than Dr. Regina Harper. The name alone tightened his jaw. She wasn't just someone with a badge. She was the badge. The moment she mentioned a passenger removal concern, everything changed. The order was clear: no taxi, no clearance, no exceptions. "We've got a situation," Reyes muttered to his co-pilot. "One of the passengers was removed from first class under questionable circumstances. FAA wants answers before we roll an inch." Back in the galley, Ms. Deborah Langley was pretending everything was fine. She wiped down the counter, adjusted the tray inventory, poured herself another cup of water. But there was something brittle about her movements now, too controlled, too careful. She hadn't yet heard about the call to the cockpit. She didn't know that she'd been named. But she could feel something off. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from calm, but from tension coiled tight beneath the surface. The other attendants were whispering, avoiding eye contact. Luis, the youngest crew member, finally approached. "Ms. Langley," he said low, "they're asking for you in the flight deck." Her brow twitched. "Who's they?" "The captain." He didn't say much, but he didn't finish. He didn't need to. Langley followed him forward, her heels slower now, the confidence in her stride beginning to falter. When she reached the cockpit, the door closed behind her with a quiet hiss. Captain Reyes handed her a headset without a word. She took it, confused. "This is Ms. Langley speaking," she said into the mic. The voice that answered was cold, crisp, and unmistakably federal. "Ms. Langley, this is Karen Reeves, Deputy Director of FAA Compliance. We're currently reviewing a passenger incident you were directly involved in. Were you the one who instructed a minor, Amira Wells, to vacate seat 2A? Langley blinked. "Yes, Did you verify her boarding pass with the flight manifest?" "I looked at it, that wasn't my question." "Did you verify it against the manifest or confirm with ground agents?" Langley's throat tightened. "No, but I made a judgment call." She didn't appear to be, she stopped herself. The voice didn't let up. "You mean she didn't look like someone who belonged in first class?" Langley's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Silence hung heavy over the line. "You are to return to that passenger immediately," the voice continued, "escort her back to 2A, and issue a formal apology in front of witnesses. This flight will not leave the ground until that is done. And Ms. Langley, this is no longer an internal matter. We are recording this communication." The line went dead. She lowered the headset slowly, her hands clammy, her pulse loud in her ears. The captain said nothing. Just watched her with a gaze that felt like a verdict. She exited the cockpit, her steps uneven, her heart beginning to slide from control to spiraling. In the back, Amira was still staring out the window, her breath steady but shallow. Her phone vibrated. Another message from her aunt. "They've ordered her to fix it. Stay calm. Make her say it." She read it twice. The aisle shifted, and then there she was, Ms. Langley, walking back, her posture tense, her hands clenched at her sides. She stopped by Amira's row and crouched awkwardly beside her, her voice tight. "Miss Wells," she began, "there was an error earlier. I'd like to escort you back to your original seat." Amira didn't speak. Didn't blink. Just looked at her, steady and unreadable. Around them, passengers leaned slightly. Listening. Watching. "I apologize for the confusion," Langley said quickly. Amira's voice, when it came, was low but firm. "Confusion? You looked at my ticket. You saw the seat number. You still told me to move." Langley glanced around. There may have been a misunderstanding. You didn't ask anyone else for their ticket," Amira said, still calm. "Just me." A nearby passenger stirred uncomfortably. Langley's voice cracked. I judged you wrongly. Amira gave a single nod. Say it louder. Langley hesitated, then repeated, I judged you wrongly. Louder this time. Clear. A woman in the aisle seat gave the faintest nod. Amira stood, gathered her bag, and followed Ms. Langley silently up the aisle. Every head turned as she passed. Some in quiet shame. Others in respect. She returned to 2A and sat down. Her seat. Her right. No one said a word, but the atmosphere had shifted. Tension clung to the cabin walls. The illusion of routine had cracked. Deborah Langley stood nearby, unsure what to say next. If you need anything, she mumbled. Amira didn't answer. Just reached for her book and opened it. The conversation was over. Luis passed by moments later. He didn't speak either. But his eyes met Amira's with something different now, acknowledgement. Not pity. Just recognition. At the front, Captain Reyes received confirmation from ground control. The passenger had been returned to her seat. The incident report had been logged. The FAA wanted full documentation upon landing. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. In the cockpit, the intercom light blinked. The captain pressed the button. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, we've experienced a minor delay. Thank you for your patience. We'll be underway shortly. But the tone of his voice said more. And across the cabin, people began to understand this delay wasn't mechanical. It was personal. A reckoning wrapped in silence. A system being forced to pause, not because of turbulence, but because it had finally been called out. And Amira Wells, quiet, composed, 15 years old, was the reason they were still on the ground. The plane still hadn't moved. Passengers who once whispered now sat in awkward silence, their conversations hollowed out by the weight of what they had just witnessed. Amira Wells was back in seat 2A, her seat, shoulders squared, book in hand, but her eyes weren't reading. They were listening. Watching. Feeling every charged second pass like a countdown toward something bigger. Ms. Deborah Langley had returned to the galley but not to work, she was unraveling. The silence she once wielded as a tool for control now sat beside her like a verdict. She hadn't just misjudged a teenage girl. She had exposed something far deeper, and now the entire plane was part of it. In the cockpit, Captain Reyes sat motionless as the final call came through his headset. Captain, said a voice cool and direct, FAA compliance officers are en route to board your aircraft. Do not proceed with departure. They will handle the matter on site. He responded with a clipped, understood, but inside, he already knew this flight would never leave the tarmac. 2 minutes later, a black SUV rolled up beneath the terminal window. No luggage cart. No food truck. Just tinted windows and 2 individuals in sharp uniforms with badges clipped to their coats. A ground crew member connected the jet bridge again. The cabin door opened with a soft click. But the ripple it sent down the plane was thunderous. Every passenger in first class sat up a little straighter. Phones lowered. Eyes darted. No one needed an announcement to know this wasn't normal. The first figure to board was a woman with dark hair pulled back, her FAA badge shining like a statement. Behind her, a taller man in a dark blazer. Neither spoke as they moved with purpose down the aisle, bypassing confused glances and stopped conversations until they reached seat 2A. Miss Wells, the woman asked. Amira looked up, her voice steady. Yes. I'm Officer Cameron Rhodes. We're here on behalf of Director Regina Harper. We'll be escorting you off the plane last. Please remain seated until instructed. Amira nodded once. I understand. The officer gave her a small nod of respect, then turned and continued toward the rear galley. The tension snapped tight as every eye followed her path. Moments later, the curtain to the galley pulled aside. Ms. Langley stepped out, flanked by the second officer and a uniformed airline supervisor. Her face was drained of color. Her lips were pressed thin, eyes locked forward. She wasn't in handcuffs, but she might as well have been. As she walked down the aisle, passengers parted for her like wind through grass. No one spoke. No one applauded. But the shame in the silence struck louder than any words ever could. As she neared seat 2A, she hesitated just briefly. Her eyes flickered toward a mirror. The girl didn't flinch. Didn't blink. She just met Langley's gaze with the calm of someone who had been forced to carry grace where others had shown none. Langley looked down and kept walking. One man near the window whispered to his wife, "She's the reason we never left." The woman replied, "She just lost everything." Inside the terminal, a team of FAA investigators waited at the gate, papers in hand, expressions unreadable. The moment Ms. Langley stepped off the aircraft, she was met with a formal introduction and escorted to a security office for questioning. There would be no quiet exit. Back on the plane, the intercom buzzed again. "Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin our disembarkation process. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign has been turned off. We appreciate your cooperation." Passengers didn't move. Not yet. Every motion felt hesitant now, as if no one wanted to be the first to rise in the shadow of what had just unfolded. Luis, the younger flight attendant, walked to Amira's row and knelt slightly. "They'll call you in a moment," he said gently. She nodded. "I know. You handled all of this better than most grown folks ever could." Amira looked at him, the faintest glimmer of calm in her eyes. "I didn't come to fight. I just wanted to fly." He gave her a respectful nod, then moved away. Minutes later, as the plane emptied row by row, Amira remained seated, still and composed. When Officer Rhodes returned, she didn't offer pleasantries. Just clarity. "Miss Wells, we're ready for you now." Amira stood, gathered her bag, and walked forward. The cabin, now mostly empty, felt like a shell holding echoes of truth. The flight had never taken off, but something else had. Something no one on that plane would forget. Outside, as she stepped into the terminal, her aunt stood waiting. Regina Harper, dressed in a navy coat, face calm but watchful. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. "You okay?" she asked. Amira nodded. "I'm okay." "You did everything right." Amira looked away. "It didn't feel like it." "That's because what you did wasn't just right, it was necessary." They turned and walked side by side, away from the gate, away from the stairs. Inside a security room behind them, Ms. Langley sat across from two FAA compliance officers. Her uniform jacket had been removed. Her posture slumped. A recorder sat on the table between them. "Can you confirm," one officer asked, "that you instructed the passenger to vacate seat 2A without confirming her boarding pass against the manifest?" Langley nodded faintly. "Yes." "Why?" Silence stretched. Then a broken voice. She didn't look like a first-class passenger. There it was. The truth. No longer hidden. No longer a private bias. Now a statement in a federal investigation. By the time Amira and her aunt reached baggage claim, the headlines had already begun to spread. FAA grounds flight over discrimination complaint. Passenger was minor with valid ticket. One photo showed Amira walking down the jet bridge. Calm. Alone. No words. Just the truth. By the next morning, the story had gone viral. Social media exploded with support. Civil rights groups issued statements. News anchors debated the issue during prime time. The airline responded with a short release. "We are aware of an incident involving one of our flight crew and a passenger. The crew member has been suspended. We do not tolerate discrimination in any form." But the public wasn't satisfied. Videos from passengers on the plane surfaced, clips of Amira walking back to first class, Langley being escorted off, the long eerie pause at the gate. Hashtags trended. Students discussed it in classrooms. Advocacy groups demanded structural change. And change came. The airline implemented new mandatory training. FAA issued new guidelines for minor passengers. A direct reporting system for profiling complaints was launched. Amira didn't ask for any of this. She didn't want to be a symbol. She just wanted to fly. And yet, something permanent had been set in motion. One evening, days later, Amira sat on the porch of her aunt's home, legs tucked beneath her, a warm cup of tea in her hands. Regina joined her. They sat in silence until Amira finally said, "I don't second guess where I sit anymore." Her aunt turned, smiled gently. "That's because you've always belonged." Amira nodded slowly. She didn't raise her voice. But the world heard her anyway. And the airline industry would never forget it. What happened to Amira Wells wasn't just about a seat on a plane. It was about dignity. It was about how quickly someone can be judged not by what they carry in their hands, but by what others see, or think they see. And it was about how one quiet girl, with calm strength and a single message, forced an entire system to stop and listen. As the author of this story, I want to offer a few reflections that I hope stay with you long after the video ends. First, never underestimate the power of truth told quietly. Amira didn't shout. She didn't demand. She didn't escalate. But she knew she had been wronged, and she knew someone would believe her. That belief gave her the courage to speak up, even if only through a text message. Sometimes the strongest voice in the room is the one that doesn't tremble, because it doesn't need to. Second, assumptions are dangerous and costly. Ms. Langley didn't ask Amira a single question before deciding she didn't belong. That one moment of bias didn't just humiliate a child, it grounded a flight, launched a federal investigation, and nearly cost a woman her career. In a world where people often move fast and think slow, this story reminds us all to pause, look deeper, and verify before you judge. Third, your silence is a choice. Every passenger on that plane saw what happened. Many looked away. But their silence was a statement too. In moments of injustice, neutrality helps the oppressor, not the oppressed. If you see someone being treated unfairly, don't just hope it will resolve itself. Speak. Ask questions. Be someone's backup when they're standing alone. And finally, to every young person watching this, you don't have to be loud to be heard. You don't have to be famous to matter. Sometimes all it takes is doing what's right, even when no one else does. That's what strength really looks like. To our wonderful audience at US Heartwarming Story, thank you for spending your time with us. Thank you for caring about justice, for listening with empathy, and for sharing these powerful stories that need to be heard. If Amira's journey moved you, we invite you to leave a comment, share your thoughts, or tell us where you're watching from. We read every word. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another moment like this. Remember, you belong in every room you walk into. You don't have to prove your worth to be treated with respect. And the next time someone tries to decide your value based on appearance, let your truth be louder than their assumption. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay strong, stay kind, and stay grounded in who you are.